Daniel had always thought of his old cargo ship as more than just metal and wires. It had carried him across long distances in space, through storms of dust, and across lonely stretches where stars seemed endless. The ship had been his partner during the early days of his travels when he had little money and big dreams. But years of constant use had left the vessel weak and broken. Its engines coughed, its panels cracked, and no amount of repair could bring back the strength it once had. Finally, when the cost of fixing it became greater than the value of the ship itself, Daniel had left it behind at a remote outpost, telling himself that one day he might return. Days turned into years, and the old ship slowly faded into memory. Like a chapter closed and forgotten, life kept moving. Daniel worked on new ships, took new contracts, and explored different corners of the galaxy. The old cargo ship rarely came to his mind, except sometimes at night when he remembered the sound of its humming engine, or the way its cabin lights flickered like small stars inside. It had been his first true home in space, but now it was nothing, more than a relic in a forgotten corner of the universe. He thought it was gone for good, left to gather dust, a shell of what it once was. Then one day, during his work on his newer vessel, he faced an unexpected problem. A vital part of the engine system, a rare stabilizer, burned out completely. He searched everywhere he could, checking supply stations, asking traders, and even offering high payment, but no one had the part. The model was too old, no longer produced, and too uncommon to find on the market. After days of failed attempts, Daniel realized there was only one place where he could get what he needed. His heart sank as the answer became clear. The very part he required was still installed in his old cargo ship, the one he had abandoned years ago. It was the only solution, and so, despite hesitation, he decided to go back. The journey back to the outpost felt strange. He remembered the place dusty and quiet, with only a few workers who repaired machines no one else wanted. It was the kind of place where broken ships went to rest, waiting for owners who rarely returned. As his shuttle approached, Daniel felt an odd mix of emotions, nostalgia, guilt, and curiosity. He wondered what the old ship looked like now. Would it still be standing? Would it even still exist after years of neglect? The closer he got, the more memories came rushing back. He remembered long nights in the cockpit, eating simple meals by the glow of a small lamp, talking to himself just to fill the silence. It had been a lonely life, but also one full of dreams. That ship had carried him when no one else believed in him. When Daniel finally stepped out onto the outpost, the air smelled faintly of rust and oil. The ground was littered with broken parts and forgotten scraps. Workers glanced at him briefly before returning to their tasks, uninterested in one more visitor looking for junk. He walked through the maze of old ships, each one covered in dust, their once proud bodies now quiet and lifeless. And then at the far end he saw it, his ship. For a moment he simply stood there, staring at it, his chest heavy with feelings he could not describe. The ship looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile, almost like a ghost. Its paint was faded, its frame covered with scratches, and vines from the planet's surface had begun to creep along its sides, as if nature itself had claimed it. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. The closer he came, the more his heart beat faster. He reached out and touched the cold surface of the door. The metal felt familiar under his palm, though it was rough with age. For a second, he almost expected it to respond, to open smoothly, as it had so many times before. But the door resisted, stiff and rusty. With a few tries, he managed to force it open, the sound of creaking metal echoing through the quiet. Dust fell in little clouds, and the faint smell of old wires filled his nose. The ship was not dead, not completely. It was sleeping, and Daniel had awakened it. Inside, the corridors were dark, lit only by the dim light from the door he had left open. Dust coated the floor, and his footsteps left marks as he moved forward. The air was heavy but still breathable, proof that the life support system had held on through the years. His eyes moved across the walls, and memories came alive in every corner. Here was the small space where he used to keep his tools. There was the bench where he had often sat, working late into the night. Further ahead was the cockpit where countless hours had been spent staring into the stars. Everything was still there, only covered in silence. Daniel felt a wave of sadness but also comfort. It was as if the ship had been waiting for him, frozen in time. He whispered to himself, almost as if speaking to an old friend, "I didn't forget you completely, I came back." His voice sounded strange in the empty space, like it did not belong, but it gave him courage. He moved further inside, determined to find the spare part he needed. The journey had only just begun, but already the weight of the past pressed heavily on him. He knew that stepping into this ship again was more than just about a spare part. It was about revisiting a piece of his life he thought was gone forever. Daniel moved slowly through the dim corridors of his old ship, careful with every step. The air was heavy and still, carrying the scent of metal and dust. He had come only for a spare part, but the moment he entered, he felt something different. The ship was not as dead as it seemed. There were faint signs that life had touched it recently. His sharp eyes noticed small details, things he could not ignore. A panel on the wall that should have been broken was now upright, fixed in place. A small light flickered in the corner where there should have been complete darkness. The floor, though covered in dust, held marks that were not his. Footprints, small and lighter than his own, led deeper inside. Daniel stopped, his heart beating faster. Someone had been here. He stood in silence for a long moment, listening. The ship groaned lightly as old metal shifted. But then he heard something else. It was not the sound of machinery or falling dust. It was softer, like a breath, a whisper carried by the air. His instincts sharpened. He was not alone. Daniel continued carefully, his hand brushing against the wall for balance. Memories filled his mind as he walked. He remembered sleeping in these narrow halls, eating quick meals between jobs, and waiting for messages that rarely came. But now those memories clashed with the uneasy feeling of being watched. His eyes scanned every corner, looking for movement. Suddenly, near the edge of his vision, he caught it. A shadow slipping away, fast and silent. He froze. His pulse racing. Without thinking, Daniel called out, his voice echoing across the ship. "Hello? Who's there?" The answer was silence. Only his own words came back to him, bouncing off the walls. But he was certain he had seen something or someone. Slowly, he followed the direction of the shadow, each step heavier than the last. He entered the main cabin, a space he had used as his living area long ago. There were clear signs of change. Objects that he had left scattered years ago were now neatly stacked. A small blanket, worn and patched, lay folded in the corner. A cup rested on the table, not covered in dust like everything else, but clean, as if it had been used recently. Daniel stared at it, his mind trying to understand. Someone had been living here, not just passing through, but truly staying. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound behind him, a quick movement like someone gasping. He turned sharply and his eyes fell on her. In the shadowed corner stood a girl, young and fragile in appearance, her skin a faint shade of pale silver that glimmered softly in the weak light. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly, filled with fear and uncertainty. She looked nothing like anyone Daniel had seen before. She was not human. Her features were delicate, otherworldly, her frame thin, yet graceful. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. The girl's reaction was instant. She panicked the second she realized he had seen her. With a quick motion, she stepped back, knocking over a small piece of scrap. The sound echoed sharply. She pressed herself against the wall as if hoping to melt into it, her chest rising and falling rapidly. In her hand, she clutched a small device, holding it close as though it might protect her. Daniel raised both his hands slowly, showing her that he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice calm. "I'm not here to hurt you." But the girl's eyes darted around like those of a cornered animal. She did not speak, only tightened her grip on the device, her whole body trembling. She looked at him as though he were the intruder, and in truth he was. Daniel felt a wave of confusion. How could she be here, in his old ship after all these Years. She looked so young, so vulnerable, yet she had managed to survive in this broken vessel. His mind raced with questions, but he knew pressing her would only make things worse. He took a slow step back, giving her space. "I just came for a part," he said carefully, pointing toward the engine room. "This ship, it used to be mine. I need something from it, that's all." Still, the girl's body stiffened. She shook her head quickly, as if afraid of losing something important. Her eyes moved toward the hallway he had come from, then back to him, her panic clear. Daniel realized she thought he might take the ship away from her. To her, this was not an abandoned place. It was her home. That truth struck him hard. The ship he had left behind in search of bigger dreams had become the shelter of a lost girl. For a long moment, the two of them stood in silence, the tension heavy in the air. Daniel did not move, letting her see that he was patient. Slowly, the girl inched toward the blanket in the corner, crouching near it as if seeking safety there. Her wide eyes never left him, and every small shift he made caused her to tighten her grip on the strange device. Daniel sighed quietly. He knew this would not be simple. Taking the part he needed was no longer just about repairs. Now it meant dealing with the fear and trust of a young alien girl who had claimed his old ship as her sanctuary. He lowered himself to the floor, sitting cross-legged so he would not tower over her. He kept his tone soft. "I won't hurt you, I promise. I only need one thing. The rest is yours." The girl blinked, her glowing eyes studying him with doubt. She did not answer, but her breathing began to slow just a little. Daniel took that as a small sign. As the silence stretched, Daniel's thoughts wandered. He wondered how she had found the ship, how long she had lived inside it, how she had survived all this time. But those questions would have to wait. Right now, one wrong move could push her deeper into fear. The ship around them felt different now. It was no longer just a dead vessel holding old memories. It was alive in a new way, carrying the story of this frightened girl. Daniel's mission had grown far more complicated than he had expected, and yet, a part of him felt strangely glad. This encounter, as unsettling as it was, had given life back to something he thought lost forever. Daniel stayed seated on the cold floor of the cabin, his hands resting calmly on his knees. He did not move closer, did not raise his voice, and did not show any sign of anger. He knew if he wanted to earn the trust of the frightened girl, patience was the only path. The young alien continued to watch him from her corner, her glowing eyes sharp and wary. The small device in her hands trembled slightly, as though she was deciding whether to use it if he made the wrong move. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncertain. Daniel thought carefully before speaking again. His voice was low, almost like a whisper, the kind one would use when speaking to a child. "I don't want to take your home. I only came here because I need something, that's all. You don't have to be afraid of me." The girl did not reply. Her chest rose and fell quickly, but her gaze softened just enough to show that she was listening. Daniel took that as encouragement. He pointed gently toward the hall that led to the engine room. "My ship needs a part, a stabilizer. It's still here, inside this ship. If I take it, I can fly again. Without it, I'm stuck." He paused, searching for the right words. "You can keep everything else. This place, it belongs to you now." The girl's lips moved slightly, as though she wanted to speak, but no words came. She lowered her eyes, staring at the floor, her fingers tightening around the device. Daniel did not rush her. Instead, he shifted his position, leaning back against the wall, making himself look less threatening. He let his gaze wander around the cabin, pretending not to watch her directly. He noticed again the careful way items had been arranged. She had cleaned the space, repaired what she could, and even decorated small corners with things she must have found outside. This was not just a shelter for her. It was her world. After several long minutes, he finally heard a sound. Her voice was soft, high, and trembling. "This, my place." Daniel turned his head slowly. not wanting to frighten her again. "Yes," he said with a nod. "I can see that. You made it yours." Her eyes lifted to meet his, filled with both pride and fear. "Safe, here." The words were broken as if she was still learning his language, but they carried meaning. Daniel's chest tightened. He suddenly understood more clearly. For her, this abandoned ship was not just shelter. It was the only safe place she had ever known. He nodded again, his expression serious. "I won't take that away from you, I promise." For the first time, her body relaxed slightly. Her grip on the device loosened, though she still held it close. Encouraged, Daniel continued, softly. "What's your name?" She tilted her head, confused by the question. After a pause, she pressed her hand to her chest and spoke a sound, a soft melody-like word that Daniel could not easily repeat. It was not a human name, but it was hers. Daniel smiled gently. "That's beautiful." Then he tapped his own chest. "Daniel." The girl blinked, studying him, and then whispered slowly, "Dan. Eel." The way she shaped the word was uneven, but it made him smile wider. It was a small step, but it was a step toward trust. For the next several minutes, Daniel kept his words simple, showing her he was not a danger. He asked small questions, though she answered with short phrases or gestures. He learned that she had been living inside the ship for a long time, though he could not tell exactly how long. She had found it broken and empty, and somehow she had figured out how to keep its basic systems alive. She had no family with her, no one else at all. The ship had become her companion, her shield against the unknown world outside. Daniel listened, carefully, his respect for her growing with every word. She had survived alone in a place most would have abandoned completely. She was stronger than she looked, even though fear still controlled her every move. At one point, Daniel shifted slightly, to stretch his legs. Immediately, the girl flinched and tightened her grip on the device again. Daniel stopped and raised both hands in peace. "It's okay. I'm not going closer. I'll stay here." Her breathing calmed after a moment, and Daniel realized how fragile the trust between them was. It was like glass, clear and beautiful, but so easy to shatter. He would need to move carefully, step by step. After a long pause, she asked a question in her broken voice. "You come back? Take ship?" Daniel shook his head firmly. "No, I don't want the ship. It's yours now. I only came back because I need one part. When I have it, I'll go. The rest, all of this, stays with you." Her glowing eyes searched his face for truth. Daniel kept his expression calm and honest. Finally, she lowered the device onto the floor, though she did not push it far from her. It was the first real sign that she believed him. Daniel felt relief wash over him. He had not only found someone living inside his old ship, he had started a fragile conversation with her, and for the first time since stepping into the vessel, he felt something more than fear or surprise. He felt connection. As the dim lights flickered above them, Daniel realized his mission had changed. It was no longer just about finding a spare part. It was about respecting the girl's fragile world, proving to her that she could trust him, and perhaps learning why fate had brought them together in this forgotten place. And though he did not say it out loud, Daniel knew something deep inside. This meeting, as strange as it was, would change both of their lives forever. Daniel rose slowly from the floor, his joints stiff from sitting too long. The alien girl's eyes followed him closely, still uncertain but calmer than before. He gave her a reassuring nod, then turned toward the engine room. She did not move to stop him, but her small body remained tense, like she was ready to run at the first wrong step. Daniel understood. Her trust was still new, as fragile as thin glass. He could not break it. The hallway to the engine room was narrower than he remembered. Panels hung loose from the walls and wires dangled like vines. His boots crunched lightly over dust and scraps of metal. The girl followed a short distance behind, silent but watchful, as though making sure he would not harm her home. Every so often he glanced back to show her a calm expression. He wanted her to see he was not hiding anything. When he reached the engine room, he paused at the doorway. Memories returned with sharp detail. He had spent countless hours here, fighting, with stubborn systems, sweating over failing engines and sometimes falling asleep against the walls after long nights of work. The room had been the heart of his ship, and now it was her heart too. The part he needed, the stabilizer, was tucked behind one of the main panels. He knew exactly where it was. Stepping carefully, he approached the panel, but the girl's sudden cry stopped him. "No," she shouted in her broken voice. Daniel froze and turned. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear, her body shaking as if she thought he was about to tear her world apart. The sound of her voice echoed through the hollow room, filled with panic. He raised his hand slowly. "It's okay," he said softly. "I know this looks scary. I just need one part. Only one. I won't break your home." But the girl shook her head quickly, her glowing eyes full of worry. She stepped forward, clutching the panel with her small hands as if to shield it from him. Daniel sighed, understanding her fear. He crouched low so their eyes were level. "Listen," he said gently. "If I take this part, I can fix my ship. But I promise I won't damage the rest. And I'll give something back. I can repair other things here. Lights, doors, anything you need. I know this ship better than anyone. Let me help you too." She hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. The silence stretched, then she finally whispered one word. "Promise?" Daniel's voice was steady. "Promise." She studied him carefully, her glowing eyes unblinking. Then slowly she stepped back, though her body remained tense. She was not fully convinced, but she was willing to let him try. Daniel gave her a small smile and turned to the panel. With careful hands, he began loosening the bolts. The sound of metal echoed, and he worked slowly so she could see he was not rushing to destroy anything. When the panel finally came loose, he set it gently on the floor instead of letting it fall. Inside, the old stabilizer glinted faintly, untouched for years. Daniel reached for it, but then stopped and looked back at the girl. "See?" he said. "Just this part, nothing else." She nodded slightly, still nervous but calmer. Daniel removed the stabilizer, sliding it carefully out of its slot. The girl stepped closer. Her head tilted as she studied the exposed space. Her fingers brushed against the wires and she gave him a questioning look. Daniel chuckled softly. "That's where it belongs, but the ship can still run without it. Just not as strong." She frowned, clearly not understanding every word, but she seemed to catch the meaning. He placed the stabilizer gently in his pack and stood up. Then, keeping his promise, he pulled out his tools. The girl's eyes widened as he began working on the systems she had been struggling with. He fixed the broken lights, adjusted the air filter, and even reconnected a panel she had left hanging loose. Each time a light flickered to life, her face lit up with awe. For the first time since meeting her, Daniel saw a spark of joy instead of fear. Hours passed as he worked, sweat running down his forehead, but he felt strangely peaceful. The girl hovered nearby, sometimes handing him tools when she understood what he needed. Their teamwork was silent but natural, like they had known each other longer than a day. When the last light flickered on, filling the cabin with a soft glow, the girl whispered, "Bright." Her voice was filled with wonder. Daniel smiled, wiping his hands. "Yes, bright." For a moment, they both stood there, bathed in the new light. The tension between them had softened, replaced with something gentler. A bond was forming, slow, but real. Daniel realized that fixing the ship for her meant more than keeping a promise. It was his way of showing respect for her courage, for her struggle, and for the fragile world she had built inside the wreck of his old vessel. He had come for a spare part, but he was leaving with something far more valuable: trust. When Daniel finished his work, exhaustion settled over him. His arms were sore, his clothes stained with oil, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. The girl stood beside him, quiet, but no longer hiding. Her glowing eyes followed his. every move, and her small hands rested gently on the wall of the ship as if she was thanking it too. Daniel looked at her, then at the ship around them. He remembered all the journeys he had taken here, all the nights of loneliness, all the dreams that had started in this very place. But now the ship no longer belonged to him. It had a new life, a new purpose, and a new guardian. He crouched so he could meet her eyes. "I have what I need," he said softly, patting the stabilizer in his pack. "I'll go now, but your home, it's safe. I've fixed what I could." The girl tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then, after a pause, she whispered, "Thank you." The words were broken but clear enough. Daniel's chest tightened. He gave her a small smile, feeling a warmth spread through him. "You're welcome." Before leaving, he checked the systems one last time. The lights glowed gently, the air filters hummed smoothly, and the doors that had once been stiff now slid open with ease. He wanted to make sure she could live here safely. Each adjustment was a final gift, a way of leaving a part of himself behind in the ship that had once carried him. The girl watched him with quiet eyes. She still held the small device close, but she no longer clutched it like a weapon. Instead, it seemed more like a comfort, something she kept out of habit. For the first time, Daniel felt that she might not see him as a threat anymore, but as something different, perhaps even a friend. Finally, the moment came. Daniel walked to the main door of the ship, the one he had forced open earlier. He placed his hand on the cold metal, remembering how many times it had opened for him in the past. Now it would remain closed behind him, guarding someone else. He turned to face the girl one last time. She stood a few steps away, her silver skin glowing faintly in the light, her eyes wide and bright. They exchanged a silent look, full of meaning that words could not carry. Daniel gave her a small nod, a promise kept. She responded with the slightest smile, quick and fleeting, but enough to stay in his memory forever. With that, Daniel stepped outside. The air of the outpost felt cooler, emptier, without the warmth of the ship's glow. He walked slowly, each step heavy with thought. The stabilizer in his pack was important. It would repair his ship, let him fly again, and keep his work alive. But strangely, it did not feel like the most important thing he carried. What mattered more was the lesson the alien girl had given him. She had shown him that even in forgotten places, life could bloom. Even in an abandoned ship, someone could find safety, hope, and home. Respect, he realized, was the greatest gift he could offer. Respect for her courage, her world, and, her quiet strength. As his shuttle lifted off, Daniel looked back one last time. The old cargo ship stood where he had left it, small and fragile against the wide sky. But he no longer saw it as broken. He saw it as alive, glowing faintly in his mind, carrying the spirit of the girl who had made it hers. He whispered softly, to himself, "Goodbye, old friend. Take care of her." And with that, Daniel flew away, carrying both the spare part he had come for and a memory that would stay with him for the rest of his life. The galaxy was vast, full of stars, and endless journeys, but a part of his heart would always remain in that forgotten ship, where an alien girl had once panicked and then learned to trust.